Welcome to the Harvesting Wisdom podcast. Together we explore the vast landscapes of life, delving into the rich soil of experiences, sowing the seeds of curiosity, and harvesting the profound wisdom that each episode unfolds. Welcome to another episode of Harvesting Wisdom podcast. I'm your host, Mike McMahon. So with me today, I've got two new friends, and I am in Buenos Aires, Argentina. We just finished a week-long trip with Claremont McKenna, which you're a graduate of.
I am.
Okay, so I have June and Joaquin with me. Welcome to the show. Thank you for being here. It's kind of crazy last minute. We're staying in a great hotel here at the Hyatt, and we've just toured the city. You are a political science major, and you were the tour guide. You know the city like the back of your hand, and history, and
That's too kind.
political intrigue that happens here. I'm going to start, I think, with you. Just give me a quick bio on who you are and let's let everyone know here.
So my name is Joaquin Rene, or Joaquin Argende. I am a political scientist. I'm also a tour guide and a staffer at the city legislature here in Buenos Aires, like the city council, if you will. I've been a tour guide since October of 2022. I worked for a company called Eternautas, those that travel through eternity, essentially, Eternauts. And we specialize in cultural and historical tours of the city of Buenos Aires. We've been doing this since 1999, in fact. It's a very important company here in terms of touring.
Great. And I'm going to have you recap a week talking in a short period of time. But before I do that, June, let's tell us a little about yourself.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm June Bea, and I started a Bea Group in 2015. I'm a proud graduate of Claremont McKenna College. I graduated in 1994. So we're here on World Meet 2025, Buenos Aires. And so I've met Mike and Joaquin this week. My background is in public policy. My heart is in working directly with young people and co-designing a meaningful work experience for them, as well as with them, and co-designing in a way so that we can do better for their peers as well as others down the road. So I'm really excited to be here.
And so my nonprofit, Urban Farming Education, is one of the programs we have is this podcast, and it's really outreach to the world. And this will be translated in Spanish as well. That right now is the one language we're translating into. So, and we have a lot of people in the Spanish-speaking world that actually tune in, and we'll probably end up doing it in Italian and French and maybe Chinese at some point as well as we start building that base. But one of the things we do is we are tried to get a start. We just didn't have enough time to plan it, but an ecotourism for Africa, and so that part is similar to what Claremont McKenna is doing, and we'll talk about that because right now you're the only representative from Claremont. So, but the other reason I had you to be here with us is because you don't have a nonprofit, but you're doing the same work. You're working with students, and you're trying to get them. You're basically building capacity, and that's what we do. We build capacity for communities. We build capacity for people to learn climate-smart agriculture and regenerative agriculture, and we build capacity in school with STEM and that kind of thing. So very similar mission, and you're a grant writer, which we'll talk about later. We need help all the time. And the ecotourism part is so critical because it's really amazing how people don't see the world from any place other than their own little place. And traveling and going to places in the world gives you a different perspective and it makes you more open. And I think it makes you more tolerant of other people. and it gives you a better idea of how you want to live your life as well. So that's where, our ecotourism will start next year in Africa, but Claremont's been doing it for some 40 years. How many of the trips? Is this your first?
This is my second. The last year we went to Singapore.
Yeah, and I've been to Lisbon and to Prague, and last year to the Galapagos associated with Claremont. And tell us a little, because I've got a list, and I'll read it off. We got Julio, who was too chicken to be on this, but I'm going to chase it down. Yeah, that's you, Julio. Julio is a PhD professor at Claremont. He's an economics guy, a great guy. And everybody's busy now. Everybody's trying to move or go to their next phase of what they're doing out here. Roque Fernandez, we had him speaking, and he played a pivotal role in Argentina's modern economic policy. We've had Carlos, and I'm going to screw up every name like I do all the time, Gervasoni?
Carvasoni, yeah.
Okay. He's a research professor, the Department of Political Science and International Studies in Recoleta de Tela University. So he's a regional manager for Latin America, a variety of democratic projects. We had Martin, who is good friends with Hiram. They went to Yale Law School together, and he's a powerful guy working on the Constitution, from what I understand. He's a trial lawyer back in the States, and he was very articulate, and he brought us to meet with Pamela Coletti. She's a lawyer, master's degree in admin from Universidad Austral in Buenos Aires, and she's a national congresswoman representing the province of Salta, which is even north of here. And so she's an up-and-coming political force, I think, in Argentina. Alejandra Casase?
Casase, yeah.
Casase, another lawyer, academic and national political leader, is affiliated with the Radical Civic Union, one of the country's oldest political parties. And then, of course, Hiram, the president of Claremont McKenna, Hiram Chodas. And we've had, and then a young student, Dante McDermott, and his family has a very large Cantana wine distributorship and vineyards in Mendoza, I think. And so we've been drinking way too much wine. But I got to say, I'm a sommelier, and I grow grapes and make some wine, and their wine is really surprisingly great as a New World wine. So if anybody wants to try that, it's available in the States. So anyway, that gives us an idea of all the things. So this is kind of what we want to do on our eco tour is there's an educational component. Ours is also more of an expedition. So we want the students to really experience, and so we'll have students and then we'll have family, very similar to Claremont. And it would have been great also to get one of the other Claremont people to come in here and talk about how they've been so successful at doing that. But again, like everything I do, it's last minute. So give me a recap of this trip in a short period of time, and we might...
It's a bit of a haze by now, but okay.
Follow another segment on this as well via Zoom, but we definitely wanted to do one while we're here and it's fresh. So give me an idea.
So we met at the lobby of this hotel the first day, and we headed over to the Bosch Palace, which is the U.S. ambassador's residence here in Argentina. We did a short tour of the building. Folks from the U.S. Embassy were there to tell you a little bit more about the...
Forgot about that.
Tell you more about U.S. diplomacy in Argentina. After we were done with that, we headed over to Palacio Paz, which used to be the residence of the major Argentine newspaperman, also politician, landowner, called José Paz.
For
lunch, that's right.
Beautiful building.
Absolutely gorgeous, right? And then we toured Plaza San Martín, one of the most beautiful squares, San Martín Square, here in the city of Buenos Aires. and headed up what we call the most Parisian part of the Paris of South America, along Arroyo Street and Alvear Street, where we are right now. That was day one from our end, at least. Then you had dinner with Roca Fernandez, former Ministry of the Economy here in Argentina. And then next day we did two tours, right? An introduction to South Buenos Aires, Plaza de Mayo, then on down to La Boca, a tiny sliver of San Telmo, which we left for later. That was, it's an introduction to the city. We saw the historic quarter of Buenos Aires.
The tourist location.
Most of the what is South Buenos Aires has a lot to look at, a lot to see. Therefore, we did I wouldn't call it a speed run, but we did a brief tour of South Buenos Aires. If we had 4 more hours, we would have filled them all with stuff to see and do.
Yeah, easily.
After lunch at Café San Juan, where we heard Carlos Razzoni, one of the popes of Argentine political science. We continued with our Jewish tour, right? We, thanks to Gabriel Zayat, one of our tour guides at Eternautas, he took you to the Jewish Museum and the Libertad Synagogue or Libertad Temple, and talked about, the Jewish community in Argentina, the
site of
the bombing sites. That's right. Both the Israeli embassy and the Jewish cultural center or social center were bombed in the 1990s. And we visited both of those locations to talk about the tragedies of the 1990s. And then for day 3, we went to Areco, right, the capital of Argentine tradition. Not in the best weather conditions, and we drove there in the rain. We walked around the heart of San Antonio de Areco. Talked about a city which was originally just a fortlet and a mission during Spanish colonial times. On the frontier, right, between what was European-controlled society and the native peoples of Argentina, and how it became first an agricultural town, then one geared around tourism, the different buildings which are all around it, and we continued that with a visit to a silversmith, right?
Silversmiths in the world.
Part of a dynasty of silversmiths that find their home there in Areco to talk about gauchos, right, the denizen of the Pampas, the archetype of an Argentine, despite the fact that we have worked very hard as a nation to stamp out that archetype, right, of that sort of a free roaming
cowboys and in a cowboy from the West and a gypsy,
something like that, right? For a long time, they were seen as these roaming vagrants that would work for a little bit, just enough to get some money, and then would just run away or ride away from the ranches on the border and just live freely, right? Sometimes hunting the abundant cattle, cimarron cattle, which were
true free spirit.
Indeed, yeah. Also part of a pretty violent society, right? Because a society without judges or sheriffs or anything like that was one in which stuff was solved on a more hand-to-hand basis. Yes. And while we were at that silversmith's workshop, we saw the only thing that gauchos really spent money on, which was their equipment, right? They were very proud of what they wore, what their horses, also the equipment that was needed for their horses. And we saw a workshop working.
I did.
Silversmith say chiseling away and stuff. Oh yeah.
I'm quite an artist.
Certainly. Oh yeah. Mariano is
to do that.
Definitely.
And they studied, I think, for a couple of years in Florence as well. So he was the real deal.
Yes.
His father had started
as part of a correspondence course. Yes, he's sort of a self-taught silversmith, and by now he's one of the top silversmiths in the world, right? After that, we had lunch at Coronado.
Okay, so this it's one of the greatest.
We chose it for a reason, right?
Yeah, and it's very simple. It ties in great with urban farming education. The woman who owns it and started it bought the property. It's very much a family-run thing, and it's the attention to detail was amazing. But she is a flower person. So she grows flowers, she collects flowers, and there are no edible flowers in the food.
Right.
The bread, in everywhere in Argentina, it's every bit as good as Italy or France, primarily because of that population base that came here. But and the food, everything. She roasted a lamb lamb for us.
Yes.
That's right.
And it was
Honest fit.
Yeah.
of course, we had Dante's wine,
Yeah.
Cantana wines, one pairing after another, the bottomless pit. I'm a testament to the 10 hours in here. So that was great. And then you'll finish up.
Well, we returned to Buenos Aires. Most of us half asleep, I would say. And then toured the National Congress of Argentina. We got a tour thanks to Congresswoman Coletti. We got a private tour of the building.
This is like going to the U.S. Congress.
That's right.
The House and the Senate and all that. The technicalities behind this and this amazing building that, has got, tons of natural light built in because it was really built right at the advent of electricity.
That's right.
So quite a classic place.
The great tour, I think. Visiting spots that usually, like most visitors to Buenos Aires, don't really get to see, like the inside of the National Congress. And then next day, early in the morning, we went to the cemetery, right? We visited Recoleta Cemetery, which is, something I always say. If you have one day in Buenos Aires, you should do maybe two things. One is the Colón Theater, which we didn't actually get to do on this tour, but some folks went on.
Well, I need to come back and do an opera. To share it.
The Colón Theater or Colón Opera House.
Go to that graveyard too.
I would say that's spot number 2. Spot number 1 is Recoleta Cemetery.
So I missed to those, but yeah.
Recoleta Cemetery is, I'd say it's one of maybe 3 of a kind across the world. It is genuinely a necropolis, right? A city of the dead, and it's
architecture underground.
Yeah.
So
from the outside, you can make out like the tops of the mausoleums like poking out from above the wall. But that from the outside, it doesn't really do it justice, right? Once you're on the inside, you realize that it's a city, right? It's avenues, little streets. Each of the mausoleums has its own little story. If, like you're in a rush in Buenos Aires, you can pretty much tell the entire history of Argentina up until the 1970s when they ran out of space, pretty much through the cemetery. And of course, both the architecture, the design, the choices in design and the materials and the people that are buried there, they're just like fascinating. And that one we did cover.
so history. It's a history of the city.
If you're a nerd, it's the great place to nerd out.
So that is day 4.
That's why.
And
That was just the morning.
would have been
That was just the morning.
the morning.
That was morning. Then you had a
Morning.
afternoon on your own, and you had lunch at La Fermenteria.
And the dinner.
Yeah, so the Tango show. Yeah,
Which was amazing too. I mean,
a trip through tango, right? The history of tango is told in dance from its origins to what they call like the modern version of tango, right?
and it started that we talk about the tango when we were in the Boca area.
That's right.
Where it all began.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so it gave me a different idea that it came from the streets. It came from, houses of ill repute.
The dregs of society.
And now
Lots of talent.
which has always been a very sexual thing to see.
Mm-hmm.
Now I understand much more of it. It's a beautiful life.
Mm-hmm.
So, so is that yesterday then?
That was the day before yesterday.
Okay.
But yesterday was our last day.
Yeah. We just went to the Centennial Market. We did a very brief tour from all that Centennial.
Everything on the planet was...
Yes. Yeah.
And honestly, the food we went to one of the top pizzerias last night, my son and I, and the pizza was, so
No?
in that market. There's the Napolitana. Oh my God, the food was amazing. And I was walking by tables with steak. People were eating that at lunch. So that is an amazing thing. So, and then would we do anything? Last night we were on our own. So that's a great recap. Give me an idea because you're the explorer here.
I am.
So what did you feel throughout this? As you just heard the rehash,
Right.
it's almost like I forgot half of it.
Exactly.
What's your take on it?
So I really had no expectations. I had no idea about anything about Argentina, Buenos Aires. I knew really very little. And so for me, it was just all of it was new. And what I do know was that I came because of Claremont. I wouldn't have come otherwise.
Yeah.
And so it was one of those where I knew that I wanted to reconnect with the community. I wanted to, be able to make new friends. And so it was great to learn so much, thanks to Joaquin, about Argentina and just such depth of detail. And we've gone on a lot of tours in my travels, and definitely yes, and it's really because of Joaquin's knowledge and just insights and
Well, it's part of the deal is if you go, and I say this all the time when I was teaching at I was a adjunct professor at a community college, and I have lots of employees too. And when I talk to them, it's how do you travel? How do you see the world? And it's, most of us, when we go to travel, we take our world with us. And it's super hard to open up. And so it's great to see the perspective. And it's not just the perspective it's the history. How did this place get to the way it is? For me, I'm looking at the ecosystem. So we were with Claremont, which is one of the top economic, policy, political schools, business schools on the planet, right? And so their perspective was very much look, we met everybody in the country, so it's a pretty amazing thing. When I go, I look at agriculture normally. So I was happy to go out and look, and I look and say, okay, how did this place form? And this was all a savanna. That's why it was so great. It was a prairie. It was grassland. And what people don't realize, we need all biomes on the planet, but perhaps the most important one are grasslands, which keep getting gobbled up. And this has been gobbled up too. This is industrial agriculture, and it's a huge urban environment. So it's not as populated. Well, now it is, but it wasn't as rapid as what we did in the United States, and creating our grapes of wrath in different areas and the things we've done. But certainly the question I would have from an environmental standpoint is how sustainable is this or any of the industrialized world, and what changes need to take place. But there is what's crazy is we're surrounded by ocean, and they don't eat a lot of fish here. You guys,
no, it's not a country known.
I have had good fish here, despite what everybody tells me, but the amount of meat is staggering.
Yes.
And the pork, lots of pork.
It has more meat than I've had, meat and wine than I've had in a very long time.
It's all at once. So, but it's part of that culture. So I'm going to dive in quickly to your operation. So walk me through it's your last name group.
Yes, Bea Group.
Bea.
Yes.
And how long have you been doing that? About 10 years, you said?
It is. It's 10 years. We're based in California, and it was really by need. So I work with communities in Southern California primarily that public school districts who couldn't afford grant writers. And so I'm a ghostwriter for them to get resources that pay for hands-on learning. So a lot of the equipment that industry uses, we put into the classroom so that when they go through high school, they have access to equipment and resources that then would be used out in businesses, right? So big Haas machine, CNC, just different pieces of equipment. And so I just take it to the next level in that's something that happens in schools I can't really control. And so what I do is use those resources and also provide paid work experiences. So we have apprenticeships right now at Bea Group. So this summer, actually today, we're going to be starting with 200 young people in different high schools across Southern California.
That's a large group.
And they're going to be working from their homes. So they're going to be doing Zoom with us and gaining workplace skills that often we don't think about, that don't get taught during the school day. So how do you use a professional email? How do you write a professional email? How do you understand how to speak professionally? How do you conduct yourself professionally? What not to do with a work email address? Things that we in the professional world take for granted. How do you dress? How do you interview? I know today I was like, I'm a little embarrassed. I didn't know we were on camera. So y'all have to excuse my attire.
Most work. No. But here
This is not my normal attire if I knew I was on camera. I thought I was going to be on audio. So in any case, so it's one of those things where we want young people, high schoolers, to really have an understanding of the expectations. And it's something that I realized they don't know what they don't know. And people who are in industry don't necessarily want to take the time to mentor and coach them on things that we feel like they should know. And schools don't necessarily spend the time doing it.
It's really, again, it's a perspective thing, but I was in high school 4 decades ago plus.
Right, same here.
Okay, so I have a perspective, and who knows if my perspective is even accurate or if it's something I've dreamed up since then, but I would think that some of this stuff and skill sets are taught in school, but they really aren't. Schools are very defined at reading, writing, arithmetic, maybe you get a little history, usually biased, and maybe if you're lucky, a little math or science, that kind of thing. But you're let out into the world, and how are you going to make that way? And in a world that's changing every 5 years or so, technology, it's critical to have these conduits like you have. And what you're doing has got a lot of alignment with what we do. So I'll definitely be hooking you in with Joe. We could use some of your writing knowledge and some of your experience.
So just as you said, I haven't been in school for a very long time. So I won't even pretend to understand what happens in high school right now. So one of the things that we're really proud of is co-designing with young people. So that's something that you also talked about, is working directly with communities.
Right.
And so that's something I feel very strongly about, is we co-design with the high schoolers for what they need, and we get feedback regularly.
Right.
So I'm a researcher by training, and I love getting feedback. And I feel like if we're going to ask for feedback, you have to act on it. There's nothing worse than asking and then ignoring people. And so it's something that I take very seriously, that if we're going to ask the young people for how could we make this better, that we're actually going to make it better.
It's crazy because that is the one tenet, I think, that Hiram was talking about with Claremont, which is what I talk about all the time. I don't do it all the time, but the idea of asking questions rather than, because when I first went into Africa, or I go into schools in the States, I obviously know more than most people, and I'm smarter than everyone. So I tell them, do this. And I'm used to being in business with lots of employees saying, do this, do this, do this. But then you step back and you realize, well, maybe I'm not. And maybe, so when you're going into a new environment and, the people in Africa have been there for, since the beginning of humanity, since that's where it all began. But they've been doing their own farming and in their own cultural practices, and they've gone through an awful lot in history. But to think that they don't have a pretty good idea of what their soil or their climate is, or the foods they eat, I'm always being surprised at how much I'm actually learning from them, how that makes a difference. And you talk about this quite a bit, and I'm a little afraid of opening up the Pandora's box because
it's fine.
So
I don't bite.
There's so much detail in what you're talking about. It starts with the history of Argentina, and my perspective as an American who's never been here. Okay, this is South America. Brazil really was Portuguese, and they speak Portuguese, but now it's the melting pot. We talk about being in a melting pot in the U.S. Nothing compared to that. I mean, from every walk of life, every body type, everything that you can imagine is in Rio when I was in Rio, right? So, but here, Brazil is a little bit set aside from the rest of South America because it's Spanish speaking. Although, as I walk through the city with you, I'm like, well, that was one component from, before the 1800s, 1700s. And then it became massive Italian and French, and they loved the French. And so this city is really a European city, which is not really my expectation. We're here in the winter, and it's cold, and it's rainy, and it's like, well, I didn't think that happens in South America, but here we are. So what if you had 2 minutes to walk through the history and part of it, so it's the same thing people ask me about Africa. This is where humans started. It's got climate like California, like Claremont's climate. The soils are varied, but very good. They have the resources. So people have been there since the dawn of time. Why are they having so many difficulties economically and maybe even culturally? And so I've got my idea of what those answers might be. What is it with Buenos Aires where there's more? Okay, it takes most third world countries never get to the point where they're eating meat. This place, everybody seems to be eating meat
all the time.
Everybody, and you've got the wine industry, but you have more than that. You have, as I drove south, I saw the real Buenos Aires, which is not the city but the county with 15 or 20 million people in it, and it looked like I was driving through Arizona or California. One big manufacturer or an equipment group after another. I could see into subdivisions that were single family and small farm plots. So how would you explain in as brief a possible way what you think that the history is, and why has there been such political turmoil? If they could just tweak it a tiny bit, it seems like Argentina should and could be like certainly one of the top world powers and a leader on a world stage.
I think in political economy, they have this term called middle income trap. That's when as a country, you're wealthy enough to start building a welfare state and doing the things that Western European countries or the U.S. or Japan did in terms of creating prosperity for their societies, or at least what they did during the 20th century. And Argentina got to that level without really getting the development necessary to sustain that level long term, right? We were dependent on exports, right? The stuff that needs to be grown here, mined here, whatever, and then exported out. And it's something which worked in like short stints during the 20th century, but which hasn't worked since the 1970s.
Well, so you had also the British came in and they somewhat colonialized in here.
We were an informal part of the British Empire for a long time. It's a bit of an exaggeration, but the British influence here was very, very strong until about the Wall Street crash or the Second World War, depending on how you look at it. And yes, you can call Argentina a place which is definitely marked by its European influences. If we were here, say, back when this was the home and not a hotel, you would go out and then, like next newsstand, you would find newspapers printed here in German, in English, in Italian, in French, and so on, because that was at least small newspapers catering to the local French community or local German community. And in fact, it was so common that you even had like conservative newspapers for one side of the community and liberal newspapers for the other, right? In terms of how how important that was for the amounts of Europeans here.
Now you still have that struggle between a global perspective and the populism.
Oh, absolutely.
The new populism. Yep. It's been tried before. It didn't really work. I'm guessing worldwide it's not going to work now. But for right now, that's what we're seeing in the States and everywhere else is this nationalism.
That's right. I think
it's happening here as well.
That transcends left and right. I think there have been governments in Argentina, right wing and left wing, that have turned towards populism and nationalism and closing Argentina away from the world. And others, both left wing and right wing, that have tried to open it up. Carlos Gervasoni, the political science speaker, a couple of days ago, he mentioned he was on the open up Argentina side. I am on that same side as well. But there are good, the folks that are making the opposite arguments. I think they're doing it from a sincere position, and based on how badly some of those opening up experiments worked out, it's reasonable why Argentine voters in some cases would not like that, right?
And we're a two-party system in the States, which I don't think works that well, but, what government does. And then you're very pluralistic.
Multi-party system.
And I was in Norway last year and in, Sweden, Norway, and they have a multi-party system, which seems to work to me pretty well. But here, it's almost overkill a little, it seems. But it's an interesting way of governing, and I think what we'll have to do is pick back up on this on another segment. I'll send this back and please produce it. We'll get some of I've got your email, and Joe will reach out to both of you guys and Maria, and we'll try to get one podcast out. I have you guys see it, and then we'll get another segue to this so you can promote your work, and gives you a little time to digest what we're doing, and then of course go into considerably more depth on this, because this is something where I think people certainly would love to come out to Argentina, especially knowing, more about it.
Absolutely.
I think that's part of the thing, and we're looking forward to coming.
I'd love that.
You've got enough of friends now that you can.
Well wishes are all over the place, right?
Yeah, and I think it's the same setup. There's things you learn and think perspectives you have, and you might be, oh my God,
Right, I love that.
But I appreciate you both being here today. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Yeah, and again, thank you for tuning in.
Thank you.
Remember to like us and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. That's okay, guys.
Thank you for joining the Harvesting Wisdom podcast. Click subscribe and like for ongoing insightful conversations. Explore our webpage for show notes and additional resources. Visit our guests' webpage for deeper insights. Your engagement is the foundation of our journey, and until next time, keep pursuing wisdom.